As a follow-up related to that, certainly with insurance, most people don't immediately feel the effects of what their money does for them until you get into a car accident or until your house gets blown down by a hurricane. Most people would choose to spend their money on other things if they don't know if there's immediate gratification. Given that the individual mandate was a Republican idea, is this something that you can get behind, or some kind of mandate regarding health insurance?
Well, I can never get behind a mandate because it's not the role of government. Frankly, I don't really care what Republicans supported it. They were wrong too. The individual mandate is one of those ideas that seems great for everybody, but it destroys the liberty of everyone. And we cannot legislate trying to do the right thing for everybody or making sure we're looking out for everybody's best interest. That's not the purpose of the federal government. The purpose of the federal government is to provide stability of the law so that all people can seek their own interests, so they can pursue their happiness. And also the government is supposed to protect our posterity, which is the other part of the preamble of the Constitution that not too many people like talking about. But I'm going to cycle back on healthcare because I talked about the economic principle, but now I'm going to talk about the actual solution. You have to end the business incentive, the business tax incentive to provide insurance. You have to end that, and you have to give that to the individual. That way people are buying health insurance with their own money with pre-tax dollars. You get rid of the barriers between the states so you can shop around the country for the policy that suits your interests. And health insurance companies will design different policies because they'll be no longer dealing with news press or with Bank of America or with Jim's Auto Body Shop. They'll be dealing with Jim. They'll be dealing with David. They'll be dealing with Byron. And we all want different things in our lives because we're all different people. We're all unique. You're very right that people have self-gratification and that they don't really see the importance of insurance down the line. But this is where we have to lower the cost of care. So it's in their best interest to buy it anyway, similar to car insurance.
Ladies and gentlemen? Question on transportation issues, because this is coming up actually, and Congress is dealing with this right now, and it constantly becomes a political football, that is what to fund, what not to fund. And do you have any specific positions with regard to how transportation should be funded? There are some who believe that you strictly fund roads, and it's become kind of a little earmark hot potato as well in the last couple of years. There's the issues of whether or not to put pedestrian-friendly, bike-friendly type of provisions on roads. Given that this is one of the areas where the most money comes out of, where the most potential for corruption is around, how might you address properly funding our transportation and infrastructure?
In terms of bike lanes and things of that nature, that's really a responsibility of Lee County or Collier County or the state of Florida. That's really not a role of the federal government, in my opinion. That's not something I should be appropriating for Southwest Florida. My duty is to make sure that Southwest Florida has all of the resources at their disposal so Southwest Florida can best decide how they want to appropriate bike lanes or whatever the case might be. If I'm appropriating that money from Washington, if I'm the one responsible for getting it back down here to the community, then that means that I'm taking people's money from around the nation to deposit here in Southwest Florida. And again, to the premise of my argument, that is not the proper role of the federal government. It is the responsibility of Lee County to make sure that it has the bike lanes if the community decides they want bike lanes in the first place. And they should be able to keep their resources here locally so that they can implement that kind of program. See, I think I speak differently than my opponents. I don't think it's my job to be an appropriator. It's my job to be a trustee so that the resources of our community stay in our community before they even go to Washington in the first place.
With regard to, I'm sorry.
Legal immigration was a hot topic the last election.
Yes.
It seems to take a lower profile now. Do you have any plan or solution to take care of that problem that surfaces and becomes a major issue now and then, especially like in the state of Florida?
Yeah, I do. I think the first thing we have to do is really change the definition of birthright citizenship. Birthright citizenship is born out of the 14th Amendment. It was designed for black slaves because they truly were here through no fault of their own. But right now, birthright citizenship has been abused to a situation that we have today. I think you have to reinstitute the protocol with regard to how many people we actually bring into the country. Edward Kennedy in 1965 blew the roof completely off of that situation. I think that going forward we have to have a definition of birthright citizenship where one of your parents must be a United States citizen because citizenship here in America has to be sacred. The third thing I think we have to do is actually enforce the laws on the books, which actually will work if we actually enforce them. Right now, the federal government tolerates sanctuary states and sanctuary cities across the country. while at the same time demonizing states who want to take their borders seriously. The fourth thing I think we need to do is end welfare benefits for people who are here illegally. It's not about me not having compassion for them. It's about being realistic about where we are as a nation. We don't have money. We're borrowing about $1.5 trillion a year. We don't have any money. You know, my kids come over to the house. I get this explanation all the time. My kids, they're in our house. Their friends come over and they play in the garage. We have waters in the refrigerator in the garage. If they give the waters out to their friends, I don't have a problem with that. But if my wife and I don't have the ability to provide additional waters, I have to stop my sons and say, you can't give the water away, because if you do, I won't have enough water for you. We're borrowing $1 trillion a year. We do not have the money to give out welfare benefits to people who are here illegally in the first place. I think if you do those things, people will self-deport. They will leave of their own regard. The last thing I think we do is institute a guest worker program. I do not believe in mass deportations. I just don't see how it can work logistically, and it will only serve to increase the size and scope of the federal government, which is something I don't want to do. And so I think you institute a proper guest worker program. You streamline the 7 or 8 we have right now. You make it efficient as government can ever possibly be, but you get a lot of the bureaucratic waste out of that so that we can have clear, defined rules for legal immigration. If we have people from Mexico, from Guatemala, from Costa Rica, from Panama, from Chile, it doesn't matter. If we have people who want to come here through legal immigration channels, we have to make them clear and defined so that everybody knows what the rules of the road are going to be. Right now, it's not the case, so we have to clean up the rules.
There's a good point with that with regard to labor shortages, because we have seen in states that have instituted immigration laws, whether it's in the Deep South, you have labor shortages as it comes to picking crops.
Yes.
In this state itself, at a recent conference of the Citrus Growers Association, there was concern that 70% of the workers are undocumented immigrants. Do you apply that immediately, or is this something that you would have to see people applying for? Because currently, as far as we're told, at least by citrus growers and by other agricultural workers, is that Americans don't seem to want these jobs.
I mean, that's a possibility, but first let's look at the process that we go through. You know, how I understand the guest worker program to work right now is that the worker has to come here first, illegally, to then be sponsored by the business, and then they have to go back in order to get the paperwork to come back. It's too much. If an employer knows that he has a labor force south of the border, and he can identify them by name and identify them as they're coming into the country, they should be able to issue the sponsorship papers for them right then and there with ICE or whatever the governmental agency might be. With regards to American workers not wanting to do the work out in the labor fields, that's really a choice for the American citizen. If they choose not to do those things, we shouldn't have a lack of immigration policy to make it easier on our business owners. At the same time, we do have to define the laws and make them clear and understandable so our businesses know how to operate in them cleanly. And right now, that's not the case, especially with the guest worker program as it exists. It's really convoluted. It's not very clean. And so that all has to be streamlined and it has to be made more efficient.
One of the criticisms of the current sitting member of Congress from this area has been that he spent more time out of the district than he didn't pay enough attention to the district. What, if you're elected, what will what's your policy and what would you do as far as taking care of the citizenry of District 19?
Well, I plan on being here a lot. Actually, my wife and my 3 kids, they will stay here in the community. I'm not moving them to Washington or anywhere else. I plan to commute all the time. And honestly, I plan on being the annoying congressman. You'll never get rid of me. I'll be everywhere because it's going to be a requirement for our community to understand exactly what's happening in Washington so that the community can have ties to me as a congressman. That's very important. We talk all the time about, guys go up and they get Potomac fever or they change once they get elected. And I think what you do is your congressman has to be part of your community. He can't be a part of Washington's community. Because once you do that, your mindset changes. It just has to. It's human nature. It's like your mother always told you, birds of a feather flock together. It's the same kind of principle, even with adult men or adult women. And so I think for my family staying here, and because my kids are so young, I'll be coming back to this district a lot. And it's going to be good for me as a congressman. It's going to be good for our community. Along those lines, one of the other things in this campaign that I've put forward is forming a People's Congress, if you will. and really having an opportunity to have all the leadership of all the different community groups in Southwest Florida. Once a quarter, you come to a room, we could do it at Harborside or wherever the case might be, and it gives you an opportunity to speak with me about the issues you're seeing in your groups. And I can explain to you what's happening in Washington. That serves two purposes. Number one, it allows the community groups to have informed relationships with each other, with each other. The second thing it does is that it helps me to see firsthand these people in the community. If I'm meeting with them regularly, then when I go to Washington, I have to be thinking about them because I've seen them. The third thing, I didn't add number 3 when I started, but the third thing it does, it builds an interwoven community. So that if Byron Donalds, as your next congressman, starts going sideways on the community, you have relationships with other people. And then you can put together your political power to get rid of me. I think that's how our communities need to work if we're going to start to really exercise our political control over our politicians and over Washington.
Bob,
Okay.
ask you a
Well,
question.